Hey guys, today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. Addiction is a devastating and insidious condition that can ruin not only the life of the individual, but also profoundly impact those around them. Like any illness, it requires timely intervention from a qualified professional before it's too late. The case of 18-year-old Pamela Mastropietro, which unfolded in Italy in 2018, shocked the nation with its unimaginable cruelty. It nearly incited widespread unrest, including targeted attacks against Black migrants. Several innocent individuals were harmed solely because of their ethnicity, and only by sheer luck were further tragedies avoided. Pamela was born on August 23, 1999, in Rome, Italy, as the only child of Alessandro Verni and Stefano Mastropietro. She grew up in a well-off, educated family. Her parents owned a successful business and made every effort to give their beloved daughter the best they could, though their busy schedules often left them with limited time for her. Some unusual aspects of Pamela's behavior began to surface during her early years. She was extremely shy, reserved, and avoided social interactions. Her parents didn't see these traits as a cause for concern, believing she would grow out of them once she started school and made connections with others her age. However, as Pamela grew older, the issues only became more pronounced. During her school years, Pamela struggled significantly with socialization and had trouble making friends. Teachers described her as bright and capable, but lacking self-confidence. She experienced severe anxiety, sleep disturbances, and various fears, leading her parents to seek help from a specialist. The diagnosis was borderline personality disorder. As Pamela grew older, her mental health challenges became increasingly apparent. At the age of 11, her family faced serious difficulties, with Alessandra and Stefano teetering on the brink of divorce. This turmoil deeply affected Pamela, leading to a diagnosis of depression. Although her parents eventually managed to resolve their differences and preserve their marriage, Pamela's condition did not improve. 2 years later, she was also diagnosed with bipolar disorder, yet she continued attending regular school despite her struggles to fit in socially. To keep up with her studies, Pamela relied heavily on prescribed medications, which her mother closely monitored. Alessandra held on to hope that her daughter might grow out of her mental health issues. But Pamela's academic performance declined steadily, and her behavior became increasingly erratic and unpredictable. Pamela blossomed into a striking young woman with a model-like figure and captivating features. By her teenage years, she began attracting attention from young men, but had no idea how to handle their advances. Her trusting and naive nature persisted, making her susceptible to manipulative individuals and questionable invitations. This ultimately led her to fall in with a dangerous crowd. Pamela's lack of confidence and susceptibility made her prone to experimentation. She was introduced to alcohol and later to prohibited substances at an early age. Her mental health struggles often clouded her judgment, and she became vulnerable in her relationships. Her psychiatrist would later testify in court that Pamela was often incapable of fully understanding her actions or providing informed consent, leaving her exposed to exploitation. Under the influence of substances or alcohol, Pamela felt more self-assured, carefree, and happy. These fleeting moments of relief quickly spiraled into a serious dependency. At the age of 15, Pamela was admitted to a private rehabilitation center where her parents hoped she could overcome her growing addiction. The treatment was initially successful, and a few months later she returned to school, seemingly free from her previous dependencies. She managed to maintain her progress for over a year until, at 17, she met a 20-year-old Romanian man named Claudiu Nuta. He quickly earned her trust, and they began a relationship. Under his influence, Pamela returned to substance use, abandoned her studies, and began running away from home. Her dependencies not only resurfaced, but intensified significantly. Claudiu ultimately convinced her to engage in dangerous activities, including exploiting her own body to fund their growing substance use. When the Mastropietros learned about Pamela's situation, they contacted the police. Claudiu attempted to flee but was quickly located and arrested. He was later sentenced to 4 years in prison for influencing a minor to use alcohol and potent substances, as well as for coercing her into engaging in illicit activities. In mid-October 2017, Pamela's parents decided to send her to another rehabilitation clinic. This time, they chose to remove her from Rome entirely, aiming to isolate her from the influences and connections that had enabled her substance use. To achieve this, Alessandro and Stefano selected a treatment center located in the small town of Macerata. The program at this facility came with a steep price tag, but her parents spared no expense, determined to give Pamela every chance to recover. The treatment plan was scheduled to last 3 months and included individual and group therapy with psychologists, as well as care from addiction specialists. After completing the program, Pamela was expected to return to a dependency-free, stable life. The Mastros believed the clinic's high cost would ensure their daughter was under constant supervision and protected from any opportunity to access harmful substances. However, the clinic staff and security were neglectful of their responsibilities. Patients were often able to leave the premises freely, violating curfews, purchasing prohibited substances, and engaging in risky behaviors. Pamela initially seemed to make progress, staying at the clinic for about 2 months. She claimed to feel much better as the support and community of individuals with similar struggles gave her hope. But this same community, combined with the lack of proper oversight, ultimately worked against her. By early January 2018, as her rehabilitation program neared its end, Pamela began leaving the clinic to obtain and use substances again, with no intervention from the staff. Her dependency, which she had fought so hard to overcome, returned with renewed intensity. Strangely, her treating physician failed to notice the relapse, setting the stage for what would become a tragic series of events. On January 29, 2018, Pamela's parents received a call from the rehabilitation center. They were informed that their daughter was missing, having allegedly escaped the facility. However, a closer investigation revealed a very different story. An inspection of her room and security camera footage showed that Pamela had calmly packed all her belongings into a suitcase and walked out through the main entrance. No one at the clinic stopped her or even asked where she was going. Pamela's companions at the rehabilitation center later revealed that she had recently started using substances more frequently, purchasing them from dealers outside the facility. She had also spoken about her intention to leave what she believed to be ineffective treatment and return to Rome. It was likely this destination she had in mind when she left the clinic. But she never boarded a train, didn't return home, and hadn't been seen or heard from by anyone she knew since. So, understandably, Alessandra and Stefano were distraught and determined not to let their daughter's disappearance go unresolved. They filed a missing persons report with the police and enlisted the help of the media. The couple appeared on a local Macerata TV station, appealing to the public for any information that could help find their daughter. They offered a significant reward for any credible leads, but for the first 2 days, no substantial updates emerged. On January 31, a distressed man called the police, reporting that 2 suspicious suitcases emitting a foul odor had been dumped in a ditch near his home. Fearing they might contain something dangerous, he refrained from touching or opening them. A caller lived in a suburban area of Macerata, just a few miles from the rehabilitation center where Pamela had disappeared days earlier. Law enforcement, accompanied by bomb disposal experts, arrived at the scene, cordoned off the area, and carefully inspected the suitcases to ensure they contained no explosives. Once deemed safe, the suitcases were opened, and what they found inside shocked even seasoned investigators. The dismembered remains of a young woman had been packed into the luggage, soaked in a corrosive chemical solution. Police immediately suspected the remains belonged to Pamela, but definitive confirmation required further analysis. They showed the suitcases to her parents, who identified one as belonging to their daughter. Tragically, Pamela's body could only be officially identified through DNA testing due to the severe damage and disfigurement. Determining the cause of death proved challenging given the state of the remains. To complicate matters further, the perpetrator had soaked the body parts in a bleach-like chemical, likely in an attempt to destroy traces of their DNA. This process had caused the horrid stench of decomposing tissue mixed with harsh cleaning agents that initially drew attention to the suitcases. The next step for investigators was to trace Pamela's movements after she left the rehabilitation center. Security footage from street cameras showed her walking toward a nearby public transportation stop where she appeared to be flagging down passing vehicles. About 15 minutes later, a taxi pulled over. Pamela exchanged a few words with the driver before getting into the car. The trail of the car Pamela entered went cold after it left the range of the street cameras, but investigators managed to identify the vehicle's license plate. The taxi driver was located shortly after, and upon seeing Pamela's photo, he immediately recalled her. His account of the night added a new layer to the investigation. According to the driver, a young woman with a suitcase had approached him at the bus stop that evening, asking for a ride to the train station. She planned to travel to Rome, but the train had already departed, and she intended to spend the night at the station waiting for the next one. The driver admitted that he offered to take her to his home instead, and to his surprise, she agreed without hesitation. He confessed that they engaged in intimate relations, claiming it was entirely consensual. The next morning, Pamela reportedly felt unwell and asked to be dropped off at a small park instead of returning to the station. The driver suspected she was experiencing withdrawal symptoms, as the park she mentioned was known locally as a hotspot for purchasing prohibited substances from undocumented migrants. However, he decided it wasn't his business and left her at the location she requested. He claimed that was the last time he saw her. The driver's story and alibi were quickly verified. He had indeed dropped Pamela off at the park before continuing his work. While he was cleared of any suspicion in the crime, Pamela's parents later attempted to hold him accountable for what they deemed an exploitative encounter, arguing that their daughter's condition rendered her incapable of giving informed consent. However, the court ruled in the driver's favor, acquitting him of all charges. In the park, Pamela encountered a man known as Desmond, a Nigerian national involved in selling substances. He was a familiar figure in certain circles and had been on law enforcement's radar. Thanks to police surveillance, Desmond was swiftly identified and arrested on suspicion of involvement in Pamela's death. During questioning, Desmond admitted to selling Pamela a dose of a prohibited substance, for which she had paid with a necklace. However, he insisted that after their exchange, she left, and that he had no connection to her death. Although his account was corroborated, Desmond remained in custody due to pending charges for distributing substances and residing in Italy without documentation. His potential involvement in the crime or in covering up evidence was not ruled out. Approximately 15 minutes after Pamela purchased the substance, security footage captured her entering a nearby pharmacy. She bought a single-use syringe and left shortly after. However, the footage also showed another man entering and exiting the pharmacy around the same time. He appeared to maintain a distance but seemed to know Pamela. The man was later identified as Innocent Osil, a 30-year-old undocumented immigrant from Nigeria also involved in the sale of substances. And Innocent quickly became a key suspect in the investigation into Pamela's death. Law enforcement obtained his address from Desmond, who had been offered a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation. Innocent Osil lived in a troubled neighborhood just a few blocks from the park where Pamela had last been seen. Investigators speculated that she might have gone to his home to use the substances she had purchased. A police unit was dispatched to the address, but no one was home, however, law enforcement had already obtained the necessary warrants to search the premises, which they suspected could be the scene of a serious crime. During the search, officers discovered multiple bloodstains that appeared to have been poorly cleaned. They also found women's clothing matching the description of what Pamela had been wearing. Testing confirmed the blood belonged to Pamela, and her parents identified the clothing as hers, recognizing it from the suitcase where her remains had been found. In the bathroom, investigators discovered more blood traces and 4 empty bottles of chlorine bleach. Instead of bullets being used to break down the doors, they found bullet balls. These findings erased any doubt that the crime had been committed there. Forensic specialists theorized that Innocent had lured Pamela to his home where they used substances together. He may have then subjected her to intimate aggression and decided to end her life. Afterward, the dismemberment and bleaching of her remains were likely attempts to eliminate his DNA. Nearby surveillance cameras captured Innocent sneaking toward the ditch where the suitcases containing Pamela's remains were later discovered. However, he wasn't alone. Footage revealed that he arrived in a car driven by another man with a third person in the vehicle. This indicated that multiple individuals might have been involved in the disposal of evidence. The car was soon traced to a friend of Desmond's, a man named Lucky Aiello, who was arrested the same day. Investigators determined that Lucky had been driving the vehicle used to transport the suitcases. Alongside Lucky and Innocent, Desmond was also in the car. Although he initially tried to deny his involvement, confronted with evidence, both accomplices provided the suspected location of Innocent, but claimed they didn't know what was inside the suitcases. They insisted they were merely helping Innocent dispose of what he described as trash. Innocent was arrested on February 2, 2018. As expected, he denied any wrongdoing and instead offered a bizarre and implausible version of events. He claimed that he had met Pamela in the park after she purchased substances and was looking for a secluded place to use them. He said he invited her to his home and she agreed. On their way to his home, Pamela and Innocent stopped at a pharmacy where she purchased a syringe. Once at his apartment, Pamela took the first dose but complained that it didn't have the desired effect. She asked for more, but with no money left, she allegedly offered to pay Innocent with physical intimacy. He agreed. After the second dose, they were intimate, but shortly afterward, Pamela began gasping for air, experiencing convulsions, and lost consciousness. Within minutes, she showed no signs of life. Innocent claimed Pamela had died from an overdose. Panicked and fearing that the blame would fall entirely on him, he decided to dispose of her body. He explained that cutting it into parts, placing it in suitcases, and discarding it outside the city seemed like the best plan at the time. He used chemicals to destroy his DNA, believing no one would accept that their intimacy was consensual and initiated by her as payment for the substances. When asked about the involvement of his associates, Lucky and Desmond, Innocent changed his story. He alleged that they had arrived at his apartment shortly after he and Pamela had taken the substances. He claimed he passed out, and when he woke up, his friends told him Pamela was dead. They allegedly proposed disposing of her remains by dismembering and packing them into suitcases. Verifying Innocent's statements proved difficult as he had indeed destroyed much of the evidence. However, investigators soon discovered critical new clues Innocent had overlooked. One detail: the victim's hands. Forensic experts found traces of his skin cells under Pamela's nails, indicating that she had fought back and scratched her attacker. As for Desmond and Lucky, they denied being at Innocent's apartment during the crime. Both provided alibis linked to their illicit substance trade, reasoning that such confessions would result in lighter sentences compared to being charged with assault or involvement in a violent crime. Their alibis were corroborated, but questions remained about their knowledge of the gruesome contents of the suitcases they helped transport. While all three suspects were in custody, forensic teams continued examining Pamela's remains to determine the cause of death. Toxicology reports revealed high levels of prohibited substances in her system, but the amounts were not fatal and unlikely to have caused her death. Further examination uncovered 2 penetrating wounds on her right side. Inflicted while she was still alive, her liver had sustained severe damage, and it was evident that she had died from these injuries due to significant blood loss. The dismemberment occurred several hours after her death. During subsequent interrogations, Desmond and Lucky admitted that Innocent had spoken to them about a woman whose incapacitated state he had taken advantage of while she was unconscious from substance use. They believed this woman was Pamela, but claimed they had no knowledge of what happened to her afterward. For over 6 months, the investigation into Pamela's death made little progress. Authorities lacked sufficient evidence to bring the case to trial, even as Innocent Osal remained the prime suspect. In a bold move, investigators planted an informant in his cell to gain his trust and extract a confession. The strategy worked. Innocent struck up a friendship with his cellmate and eventually admitted that he had noticed an attractive young woman behaving strangely in the park. According to him, she was so trusting that she agreed to accompany him to his home and accepted substances from him without questioning their contents. When the woman became unconscious, Innocent decided to exploit her vulnerability, viewing it as payment for the dose since she had no money. However, Pamela regained consciousness, began to resist, scratched him, and threatened to call the police. This enraged Innocent, who grabbed a knife and stabbed her in the liver. But moments later, Pamela became still and appeared to stop breathing. Assuming she was dead, Innocent quickly devised a plan to dispose of her body in a suitcase. Realizing the body wouldn't fit, he decided to dismember it. As he started with her limbs, Pamela unexpectedly regained consciousness, screaming and crying for help. Panicking, he stabbed her again in the liver, this time delivering a fatal wound. The informant recorded Innocent's confession, making it a pivotal piece of evidence. The informant later became a key witness during the trial. Additionally, Lucky Amo came forward, revealing that Innocent had called him, presumably during the attack, asking for help disposing of trash. The informant called trash and attacked two others to dispose of trash, a 10th toward her trash. Lucky admitted hearing faint cries in the background but dismissed them as noise from the television.